Hello, welcome to Unfiltered with Mariat. I am here to have real conversations that inspire, challenge, and connect us. Together, we will dive into stories that matter, build authentic connections, and uncover strategies to grow capital, whether it's financial, social, or personal. No filters, no holding back, just impactful discussion with incredible change makers and visionaries. Let's grow together. Join me. Unfiltered with Mariat. Unfiltered with Mariat podcast. We have two incredible guests with me today. I'm just so excited because this is also an incredible month. I want to give a shout out for Black History Month. So with me today on Unfiltered with Mariat podcast, welcoming these two incredible leaders and visionaries in our communities, Dr. Tolu Malomo and Yamila Franco. Welcome on board.
Thanks,
We're going
Mary.
to have great conversation, build connection, and grow capital. So welcome on board to Unfiltered with Mariat podcast.
Thank you.
I'll pass it over to you because I really want the audience to know who you are. So I'd like you to introduce yourself. So I'll start with you, Yamila.
Okay, thank you for having us. I am so excited to be here. So for me, like you said, my name is Yamila. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. So I am all the way from the Caribbean. I immigrated to Canada 11 years ago. So I first came as a student, like so many people do. My background is really in sciences. So I graduated with a degree in biology. Upon finishing university, I worked a little bit in nonprofit in STEM education for youth, then decided to go into business. See, from the beginning, when I immigrated, my primary goal was that I wanted to figure out how can I be more financially secure. See, in our country, we were successful, but there was so much political instability. And so upon coming here, I said, well, what can I do to position myself? So one, I can take care of my family back home and my future generations as well. And business was the solution. So went into business, worked in biotech, grew a company. And then after that, my second business was actually in financial literacy, which is what I do today. So I have a financial literacy campaign with the goal of educating 30 million families by 2030. And ultimately, as a byproduct, we are building generational wealth as well.
Awesome. Wow. I'm going to come back on that. There's so many things that was just unpacked there. So I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Tolu Malomo, to introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Tolu. I was born in Nigeria, raised in Nigeria. I'm a doctor by training, consultant neurosurgeon, with specialty and interest in spine and trauma. So I came to Canada 2017 for an elective, and since then I've been coming back and forth, but decided to stay back in 2020. During that period, I started a research at University of British Columbia with interest in spinal cord injury trauma and trauma in the spinal cord injury. So I started researching how treatments can affect the way the disease progresses and what we can do to change that. And over the last few years, we found some interesting things that have been very helpful, and new policies are coming up. During that period also, I've always been an entrepreneur all my life. I owned my hospital back in Nigeria. I owned the medical equipment company. I set up some hospitals for the federal government back then. So coming here, I was itching a bit to get back into the business. I heard stories of a few people not getting the best deals, especially in the car industry. I knew nothing about cars. I love driving them, but I didn't know anything about it. So that was a business I said, okay, this is a challenge. Challenge accepted. I was going to learn about this business from the ground up. And I've been able to build a business. My car company has been up and running. We're in the 4th year now, expanding, growing. We've been working more to help Black people who are underserved get the best deals possible. And of course, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't get it right, but the goal has always been to be kind and helpful. And we go beyond just selling cars. We also help them with parts, we help them with post-sale servicing, we help them with repairs. Sometimes we don't even sell to you, especially if what you need is not a car, but you need more of financial education. And I'm also licensed in that. So,
Oh, wow.
there are instances I turn down clients and like, no, you don't need a car. This is going to ruin you. What you need is to sit down with someone like Yamila, let her teach you how to
Oh, wow.
build your business, build yourself first, then.
Coalition that is.
Yeah, and we have done that a few times. And by the time the person that comes back 2 years later to buy a car, they get something way better than they decided to get in the first place.
Well, it took me back to my days, if I can comment on that, when
I worked as small business manager where I see a lot of entrepreneur comes in and you're reading financial statement and everybody is asking for a loan. And like, do you really need a loan or you need to really go back to the drawing board and take away or try and mitigate where you spend more and bring that money into your business? It could have just not every time that you need a loan, or you need to understand your financial statement and how you can bring money back into your business and then come back when your business is able to serve that loan, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it just makes sense and it's a huge, because if you don't mind, I'm going to hold it there because I really want to talk about Black wealth in regards to that statement and see where the disconnect is, where we all kind of like feel the way together well to just to go get a bunch of credit cards and loans. And it's kind of like an epidemic in our community, you know. I don't know if I'll say right now, but it's something that I've learned and I've seen through my days. And sometimes it's just like people like Jamila, like can step in, like yourself, and educate and see how we can save more rather than get more loans. But going back to you, Jamila, I know you talked about, in my country when I came here, but you didn't tell us where you were coming from. So that was where I said, oh, we're going to unpack a few things there. And to understand, like, you immigrated from Nigeria. I'm Nigerian myself, so amazing. But Jamila, tell us where you actually immigrated from. And, on that note, probably give us more insight into what does that feel like? What gaps are you seeing having left your country, staying in Canada? How does that feel as a Black woman? Like, just give us like that kind of like, insight.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. A lot of people don't even know where it is, but it's a country in the Caribbean. The small island, it's very beautiful, very warm. I feel the culture is just like the temperature. It's like summer all year round, and I absolutely adore it. We grew up, the strongest values we had were community and family, and entrepreneurship is inherently something we do back home because we understand, for example, yes, you can have your job. Yes, we study to become lawyers, doctors, but we look at what can we do with our knowledge and our degrees as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece is that very quickly I understood that for us, the way we live back home, there's not a lot of, say, maybe long-term planning, which I realized upon immigrating here, that was a necessity. If I'm going to stay here, I must plan long-term. And lastly, a key difference was that back home, financially, you could be okay, you could be not so well, but people will always take care of you. We always have, my neighbors will never allow me to go without having dinner. If I have my mom, I literally call people in the building to see, have you checked on my mom? Or they call me and tell me how things are doing.
I have to move to the Dominican Republic where I could look at my dinner.
It's a completely different sense of community and also how people support each other. But I also see a huge disparity both in wealth and education. You can find extreme poverty or extreme wealth as well.
Mm.
And having experienced that, I mean, everything is privatized. So if you don't have money, how do you access healthcare? How do you access private education? At the same time, I mean, you can also argue that because of that, my parents, they work really hard. They did get their degrees and they went into business, which is what allowed me to even learn how to speak English because we speak Spanish back home. We have Spanish, English, French, of course, a byproduct of history, colonization. We're mixed. We have in our ancestry indigenous, Spanish, and also Black as well, because again, what happened with people coming to our island. And I absolutely love that mix because we have so many cultures and music, food coming from different places.
So when you say your background, you identify as a Black woman. So will your ethnicity background be, when you look at the Dominican Republic, being a Caribbean island, and how does that, because I'm educating, I talk about Black communities, because oftentimes people just think Black, and it's like, no, it's beyond what Black is. It's Black communities, because it's different communities, right? And so I look at yours, probably, are you going to call yours the Afro-Latinas, Latino community, or?
So what's interesting? I don't even feel like a Latina because then that's Latin America. I'm like, no, I'm Caribbean. We don't grow up with that culture either. So I absolutely love identifying myself as a Black woman. or even Afro-Caribbean, or I'll go even to Afro-Indigenous if I want to honor that part of my ancestry as well. And so I tell people, actually, it was when I came to Canada that my identity became such a big topic of conversation. See, back home, nobody asked you, where are you from? People, I'm even light-skinned back home. I am, in Spanish, we call it mestiza. I am light-skinned. Whereas we made in my family, my grandparents' cousins, they are a darker, like your skin tone too, but nobody questioned that. Whereas here, you find that there's always a question.
So why is there a question about color? Why do we say color? Why do we see color? I don't have asked that question.
Is like, are you black? I'm like, okay. And okay, like, yes, no. I mean, what do you want me to say? I'll give you your answer.
So back to you, Dr. Malomo, Tolu. You're from Nigeria. I'm from Nigeria too. And I think maybe, I don't know if you're gonna agree with me, but Jamila was talking about, you see the extreme wealth and the extreme poverty. And when she mentioned that, I was like, you have no idea. That's Nigeria too.
Yeah.
Right? There's no middle class. There's no middle belt. For me, it's like, I always say to, like, you have to afford or not be able to afford things. Back in the days when I was growing up, there was middle belt, right? Where you had the rich, the average, and then
Civil servant.
yeah, exactly. There was the word civil servant, but now even people that serve in the government, people are like crying and looking for means to an end. So my last visit to Nigeria was in February last year, and I saw a lot of that huge gap. Like, you either have or you don't have, and it doesn't matter. Except you're kind of like really doing really well. What do you think about that? Like, in terms of those gaps, it's like I'm bringing that back in because of the Black History Month celebration this month, February, and just to talk about more about that disadvantage, because oftentimes allies wonder, why do we leave our countries and come here, right? And oftentimes people have to understand some people were born here and some of us migrated for different reasons. So I'll just let you, tap into that, Tolu.
As of 2017, we still had the middle class. We still had, like, I remember then when I traveled for conferences, no, there was nobody funding me. I paid myself. And I go to the US for a conference and my colleagues there, and I take them out to dinner. Like, those that were still trying to get into the system, obviously. So I didn't think we were doing too badly then. We were doing okay. Maybe we're not wealthy, but we could conveniently save the equivalent of about $3,000 to $4,000 every month. If you had your own site, we call them side hustle. So your salary from the government was just enough to put aside as a more senior doctor. Wow, what you get from a side hustle will take care of you, and you live like a prince. That's back then, and people here couldn't save that much. I couldn't see anybody then when I traveled saving up to $4,000. How? Most of them were living hand to mouth. But you could also say the quality might be a bit lower. Yes, I agree with you on that. But I traveled for a conference and I had the equivalent of $10,000 in my account. I was away for 4 days. Got back to the airport, wanted to change the rest, and the exchange rate had changed. In 4 days, from the equivalent of 10,000, I had 3,000. I became very dizzy at the airport. Like, when did this happen? What happened? Like, I know it's not possible. Wednesday last week, I just got this amount. I was like, oh, just yesterday. So you could become broke just like that. So, and
when you mean you can become broke, do you mean like the
exchange rate?
The ideas of the frequency of the way the economy or the exchange rate impact?
No, the volatility of the economy, the way things can just crash.
Yeah.
Overnight. I couldn't plan for it.
Is that like in a global perspective or more in
No, it was more of a local problem.
African.
And look at it again. It happened again this last, after Tinubu became the president, that he devalued the Naira. And all of a sudden, people who saved their money in Naira just became broke again.
I noticed that when I went back, people were more saving in dollars or foreign currency. Nobody cared about having so much Naira. People wanted to have foreign currency. And then if there is a case where the currency goes high and you see people running around to exchange money so they can get more in Naira. Yeah. And I was like, wow, right? So I noticed that in February. So in terms of like looking at all of these, because we talk about Black wealth, Black health a lot, Black joy, what, like if it's someone who is listening that have just migrated here, or someone who's thinking about coming here, or maybe the ally who doesn't understand, why do we leave Nigeria or Dominican Republic and want to come to Canada? Canada is cold. For me, my reason coming here was because I didn't actually come directly from Nigeria. I was actually, living in England and with my family, but decided to come down here to, I was going through some time in personal challenge in my life. I was going through divorce, just to put it out there. And I wanted a place where I could just come in, upgrade myself, have an education, because I've always wanted to have my MBA and I've always wanted to have the EMBA, the executive MBA, and it sounded more doable to come to Canada. On that note, a lot of people always say, like, Black communities are always so focused on education. The other doctors or lawyers, they're always studying. And I looked at it, for me, it was coming to get an education was a way for me to be able to compete in the market and get
Absolutely.
a job the focus is always about family, which is something you mentioned, Jamila, which is so true. My focus was more about, I want to be able to have a job that sustain me and I can take care of my immediate family, which is my children and all of that, and be able to, there's always the desire and the demand to take care of people back home because people are really not doing really well. And then I'll talk about this side also, which I want you guys to give me your input. Most, as a Black individual, no matter the job title, we always have a side also.
Yep.
I have a side also. Is it something that's ingrained in our DNA as, a Black individual, or will you say something that is a necessity? Is it ingrained? Is it a necessity? Or is it something like a must do? I'll probably say necessity, must do will go together. So is it a necessity for us? Or is it just something we don't understand why? Because it's just ingrained in our DNA from maybe ancestors or something? But we always have a side also.
Yeah, that's pretty easy to answer. I can speak only for the Nigerian community.
Sorry, Jamila, we'll let you speak for the Dominican and the rest of the...
If you look at the quality of people that come from Nigeria to Canada, they're usually the top-notch guys back home. They were junior executives, the banking industry, telecommunication industry, engineers, architects, lawyers. So when they come here, education is one way to understand the system. And I'm not talking about people coming in using education to get into the country. I'm talking about people that came in as permanent residents or came in with a work permit or whatever. Education is just one way to understand the environment where they're in. But that's never going to be enough because they've worked hard all their lives. They've pushed hard all their lives. So there's always that need to do more. They've broken barriers all their lives. A lot of people, it's not straightforward. It's not easy becoming one of the best graduating students in law school or becoming a very brilliant engineer. You designed some lovely structures back home. Then you just come here and just sit down in a class and do nothing. That's never going to be enough. Or you're in a 9-to-5 job. You won't find enough satisfaction in that. You will always want more.
Why?
Because that's the human nature to want more, especially if you have been driven from the time immemorial. You have the drive to achieve success. You have the drive to become better. You have the
But
drive.
it must be coming from somewhere. And Jamila, I need you to, the drive of wanting more, I don't want to look at it as the economic acceptable wants. I want to look at it, why is the drive to have more in our Black communities?
So I see it in two ways. Now I just want to add, when Tolu was talking, I thought that competition breeds success or excellence. In a way, that's one. But why seek excellence? Why is it something like you were saying? Is it cultural? To be fair, when I look at my parents and I look at so many people, entrepreneurship has been out of necessity. I would say maybe at the root cause, if we look at our parents or grandparents, because in my family, they were not the recipient of generational wealth. They were also not the carriers of financial literacy. So even if anybody ever received anything, I don't see how they kept it. In fact, I saw how my parents made financial mistakes, which at different points costed us even my dad's business. And so even at this stage, coming to Canada, I look at it as I need to do better than them. One, there is a sense of pride. For me, I look at and I think back at everything my parents sacrificed. Think about my grandparents, great grandparents, everybody before, because I understand there's a long history of people that had to push through barriers I can't even imagine just for me to be here today. And to me, I am proud to say I will become the best. One, because I can, but it's how would I describe it? If somebody sacrificed so much to give me an opportunity to be here today, why wouldn't I become the best at whatever I am doing? And why wouldn't I help other people also have the opportunity to be their best and to do the best? You see, I remember I went to a conference once and there was a dragon from Dragon's Den, literally from Dragon's Den. It was a women's conference on business. She was meant to inspire us so we could aim for higher. And to inspire us, she shared her story of how for her first company, she had to ask her dad to lend her money. And she said, finally, my dad agreed to lend me $40,000. And that's how I started my first company. And I thought to myself, I understand everybody is excited in this conference, but I cannot go to my dad and ask him for $40,000 to start a company. If anything, the reason I am hustling to start a company is because I need to take my family out of that current situation that we have, which even during COVID, it got worse. And so I said, one, I can't relate to this person. Number two, to me, it's a need to be an entrepreneur, but I'm also proud to say that
And
I
that
am
just really
pushing through.
that just really sums up why Black history is very important. Because where you are in an audience where you're supposed to be empowered and say, hey, I started my company and I borrowed money from my parents, and most of us would sit down there and be like, whoops, I wish I could do that. There was no
No,
way I could go
yeah.
get money from my parents, because I remember talking about enough or less. My dad was okay for me. Seeing my dad, when, as I was growing up as a young girl, I felt we were fairly okay. But it was until I got to university, things like got bad, and like my dad must have made some financial mistakes himself because he got broke,
Mhm.
and I know how that was very painful to him, and I felt that pain too, where I felt like I needed to be successful.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a mixture of a necessity and is ingrained in us. When you say competition to be success, to bring out
Breeds.
excellence,
Yeah.
there is a sense of competition within families or within community where, say, you send a kid to to go study medicine, and the parents actually those days would tell you what you should become. But I think things have changed now. And there's this every pressure on you that your mom wants you to, like, my mom wanted me to become a lawyer, right? And I had other things I want to become. And then, like, you just feel like, I feel for anybody who went through that process, feel a sense of, I can't feel them. They've put me through this. But we never think about it like, oh my gosh, that was not what I wanted to do. I wish I did something else. But we feel the sense of loyalty and commitment
Yeah.
that we need to make them proud, right?
Yes. I do want to add to that. I said there is the necessity of do a side hustle. And yes, you were asking about it. But sometimes I wonder, why do we only stay in the side hustle category and also self-employment, contracting, rather than looking at how can we build a business? And that's, I think, maybe a whole completely different category.
Because we want some sense of security. I'm gonna bring it to you, Tolu, because what do you think about that sense of security, and what do you think in the corporate world where there are probably no opportunities for you to climb, right? And then you're feeling, I have to go do this side also, because there's so much challenges going on, and my side also is maybe that was your original dream and purpose and passion, but culturally you couldn't do that because it was at a. I'm not pointing you out, Tolu, but you're a doctor. Maybe the doctor runs in your family, and
Yes, it
everybody
does.
needs to. Exact. I didn't know that, but everybody needs to pick the pace. I can't disappoint my father. I need to become a doctor too.
Yeah, that's
I
somewhere.
need to become exactly. But in your mind, you knew I want to go educate families about financial literacy. I want to sell cars. Now you're a doctor and you're selling cars and you're helping families get better with financial literacy and education. So huge difference in terms of
The things I do, yes. One of the things I've learned is the fact that what you call your side hustle or whatever, you have to decide, is that going to be your passive income? And some people say they have a side hustle, but it's their second job. Some people say they have a business. No, but they are employees of that business. So you must have yes, I understand every business needs about 5 years of attention to grow, right? But the long-term goal should be you can hands off. You've created a system and this business can run by itself without your presence. And that should be what everyone strives for. You should be able to look at it. I run a car dealership now, but I don't want to continue to run the same model like this in another 10 years. I have to think ahead. We're going more to the electric vehicles. In 5 years, will I still be able to compete if I don't find a way to get into that niche? I'm not going to go back to school to learn about electric vehicles, but I start thinking about bringing people who are in that niche on board so they can take care of that when I'm gone. I had to think of how to build something that's not going to satisfy just myself and my immediate needs.
I like the way we're going into generational wealth now, because that was not anything anyone taught our parents. Like, but now we're all getting this feel of we need to do more. Wealth needs to be generational, because one of the things that allows us to have all of these differences and we seem to not have enough is because looking at the white community, there was always like generational wealth passed on, and you look at colonialism too, taken from us.
Yeah.
So we have absolutely nothing really. What are you to pass on really? Most families in Africa, when I visited at least Nigeria, were just more. I saw us. They're just more interested in you know getting over the day.
Yeah.
And I this was something that I experienced when a young guy I met at the market. I went to get some fruits, and I wanted to experience it because it was very colorful. But so many years ago, I experienced the market, so I wanted to go and of course take pictures. And she was so good at calculating the money. I was like almost, because Nigerian money, if you totally understand, it's counting the money was like a whole day walk because of the difference. And I didn't have lost that momentum. So he was like so fast. The way he was flipping and counting the money, I was like, ooh. And then he was so good in calculating, giving me the change to the last cent. Like he rounded it up. And I was like, first of all, what are you doing here? Why are you not in school? You seem to be really good with maths. And I was like, oh no. And like auntie's a thing. Culturally, you call anybody who's older than you auntie. No, we cannot afford that. So it's better for me to be here, at least helping my mom so that we can afford to put food on the table and pay our rent. So that's our focus, is just to get by today. And I was broken. Like that's a talent there. But I mean, like you said, maybe that side also, or what I call it, a business they're doing, they could upscale it in the future. But I was so touched by it, you know what I mean? So looking at Black history, Black words, Black health, Black love, Black joy, I'm going to pass it back to you again, Tolu. What does that really mean? What is the message we need to pass to the allies to truly understand how that really means a lot? Like, people don't understand sometimes why we celebrate Black History Month.
I can't remember all the details, but I remember that it was in the UK, it's in October. In North America, it's in February. And it started from the US, and that was because of the birthday of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Abraham Lincoln is February 12th. Frederick Douglass is February 14th. And they were both anti-slavery. And that's the origin of it, just to also help us to know the history of who we are. When you take away the knowledge of people's history and you've taken away their identity, you can rewrite their story. And that's why right now, the problems we're having is because we're not students of history. So what does this month mean?
We are not students of history. That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
The month means, where's Black people? You talk about wealth. What is really wealth in itself? It's a concept that we created. How much do you really need to survive? How many rooms can you sleep in a house? How many cars can you drive at a time? So if we think about it like in terms of having millions of dollars, you'll realize that you may not actually experience wealth. You'll experience having lots of money, but what you're really looking for is freedom.
Wow.
But then you become the slave to that money and you keep trying to acquire more and acquire more. So we have to also teach ourselves that wealth is good, but what we're really looking for is freedom.
This is really very powerful. Like, I'm really goosebumps. Like, we're not student of history, so we don't really understand what we're looking for is actually freedom. And we probably don't even recognize when we get the freedom because we're just like an hamster still running around. And the money is controlling us. And I'll bring it back to you, Jamila. Does that also explain the scarcity mindset mentality in the Black community? How we're not supporting to one another? Because that really, I can't understand. Everybody wants to be number one and everybody else number 90.
But I want to build, because Tolu said is you want that freedom, and I want to add, and that freedom ties to ownership. Because for me, what I was looking at as I even reflect on what he's saying, making my decisions of what business to do, how I treat my business, I want ownership of my time. And that ownership now opens doors for me, how I make my money, how I invest my money. I want ownership of how I think, how I make decisions. And there are so many things like
What's stopping you from having the ownership to your mindset and how you make decisions?
Well, at this point, what I've realized is a lot of how I think is a byproduct of my environment. That's one. If I'm growing up,
Example.
for example,
That's powerful. You can go away without giving an example.
for example,
Of an environment. Tell me.
if I grew up in an environment where the conversations and the actions, like you were saying, the scarcity mindset, and that is the message that is passed on, not just from my parents, but from social media, from the books I read, from maybe the education I receive as well, then I'm going to believe that that is the truth. I'm going to believe that there is scarcity.
Well, I look at scarcity also from a more, I'm talking more like the scientist now of Tolu, so I'm not the doctor here, but I'm looking at it more about the trauma and those intergenerational trauma our ancestors have passed into us.
Even at a DNA level.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a story.
Yeah, I'm a scientist, so.
Where back in the days during our ancestors' time, that we put against each other for just a tiny morsel. It was like a game show, for people to watch and say, hey, let's see who is going to win the fight. But one person must not stay alive. So it was more about survivor rather than anything for the tiny morsel, for the bread, for the water, for the days. And we're treated so badly. This is history.
Yeah, and actually that's where the theory of epigenetic reconstitution comes from, right?
Ooh, repeat that, please.
The epigenetic reconstitution, where you think, like, when people are growing up, like, it was seen amongst the survivors, the Polish survivors in the World War II, whereby they were starved of food. Then when you then place them in the midst of plenty, the body has adjusted itself to want food so much that if they just eat a little quantity, the body tries to stop everything. So they were predisposed to diabetes or predisposed to obesity. And you don't need to
I'm going to blackhead through that because, health is like...
So the body tries to reconstitute itself for survival, and that's the thing. But there's also something you say, collaboration or competition. And until we learn to collaborate as a people, we will always be at the bottom.
I said that those are my favorite words. And for me, I have my coping mechanism because I live in Vancouver, and I'm not going to bite my mouth to say I love Vancouver City so much. And I think Vancouver has helped me align what my purpose is and how I really want to focus on that and achieve that and help a lot of people through the social impact, aspect, because my dad, I think that was ingrained in me from my dad too. But Vancouver has also shown me a different way in the way collaboration is non-existent. I don't see enough of it. I see what we call a pod. But there's no sense of, for me, and I know like a lot of people will probably disagree, but it's my own feeling. Like, where's the sense of community? Like, when the center cannot hold things, they say fall apart. We need a really grab center of community where we can bring all Black communities together, no matter where you're from, and truly walk to what we call equity within the Black community. I see that disparity. We need to close those gaps.
The same thing I see in the Nigerian community when someone starts a business. Like I remember someone started like a food catering business, and next thing everybody's
doing food catering because that's way to make money. Nobody thinks in a more innovative way.
My sister-in-law started a shipping business, and now they've proliferated all over the place. And I'm just thinking, okay, why can't you all come together? You all don't have enough resources individually. Why can't you come together, put your resources together, have a warehouse, have a system in place to do the airline shipping, to do the deliveries, to do the packaging.
But that's also where financial literacy comes in, because yes, it's knowing to save and invest, it's knowing how to make money, because they're all looking at the same stream of income. But what if we looked at diversifying streams of income within that same industry, within that same shipping business? Just like you said, could we have a warehouse? But I'm sure that they could also maybe have another income from the rich.
Opportunity for collaboration, even if 100 people doing the same thing.
Yeah, the sky is big enough for all birds.
We say that when you go into leadership, when you climb the ladder, you become, a CEO or whatever you become. Don't forget to throw the rope, because there's a lot of space on the top for other people to come on top of it. But having said that, innovation, and I think I also want to say the government have recognized that, okay, we need to do this, and everybody's like inclusion, equity in the Black community. And sometimes it looks like as if they're just throwing like presents to everyone. Okay. Everyone is saying, oh, this is a way to make money now, because they just train all of us like, little parcels, so we can all just, I'm all for inclusion, because I feel I need to be in rooms not only where people look like me, but where people don't look like me, because they have to understand what it feels to be like me. And even in mental health, right? Mental health is a huge whole long department. Like, it's different grades, different type of mental health issues. So you can't just talk about mental, because you would talk about it all day.
Yeah.
But I see that also it's something like our Black community feels like a taboo. We don't want to talk about it, because and I also feel like there is that intergenerational trauma that we don't talk about, where we do need that healing first before we can truly come together and even think about collaboration. We need to start having all of this uncomfortable conversation to get comfortable at, and to really be accountable, and to really understand what our actions and how it makes the other person feel, rather than feel like this person has withdrawn away from me. Like someone like me, I always say, I'm so sorry, but I think social media gives us the means to use block and delete. And people are like, you don't have to block and delete anybody. I say, well, that's how I put my friends up. I want to help my community. I want to be there for communities. And I think I have done my best in terms of like, not just Vancouver, but all the provinces that I've lived, that I'm all for inclusion. But we need to start having this conversation of, could this be a mental health issue in terms of like, we're not saying like you need a hospital, but we're saying let's talk about our intergenerational trauma in burning out that we don't talk about, and we're scared of one another.
Yeah, personally, I would say we all need some form of therapy. And back in Nigeria, then church, the mosque, the neighborhoods. The church to me was a form of therapy.
Yes.
The mosque was a form of therapy. The family setting.
Tolu, like, you are getting all my goosebumps up. Like, I didn't tell you anything about me, but I'm telling you, I walked into churches in Nigeria with my friends just to go out, like, this feels really good. I was born a Muslim. But then I read the Bible the first time with my friends, and then I was quoting in the Bible, like I was actually becoming like a little preacher. So I too understand it was a feeling, like the feeling I got from entering those churches, you just brought it out. Like, I don't even think I've even said that to anybody. It was really therapy, to be honest.
The
Right.
family setting where an uncle tells you, no, don't do this, or a cousin tells you, or someone else is looking, it's a form of group therapy, but that's not enough to survive it. And that's why all of us excel. You can see a lot of us can do so well back when you throw us into the jungle and we can survive. Look, I have done some crazy surgeries with nothing. And so I tell people I can operate the brain. I can operate the brain under a tree.
Please don't.
No, like that literally I can operate the brain under a tree. And I've seen my bosses do things that are very similar to that. Like sometimes there'll be nothing to work with, but someone is dying and we just needed to go for it.
Basic necessity, like we can do with the basic stuff.
Yeah,
That's what
and we did some great things. We still need to be able to adapt to the global world. Our start, think local, act global.
Think local, act global. Okay.
So think about what you have in your immediate environment, but remember it's bigger than this microcosm of yours.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big world out there. And in that so-called big world of Earth, we're still in the solar system. We're in a galaxy. And that galaxy is a tiny portion of...
Are we going to be able to come together? To be honest, that's where...
This is where I would say the space that is taken by all this trauma is space that it's limiting us from focusing on everything else that we could be creating. You know how we talk about the lack of innovation? Yeah. See, because we are, now I'm not going to say we're caught up, but a lot of times we don't realize even those things that we are maybe inherently carrying, that those habits, our decision-making process, which naturally we're not trusting people in our own community, for example, that is taking away. I feel that
this is a big one too, right? So they are ego and we're just so afraid of one another. Like it's just something like we're suspicious. That's the word I use, suspicious of one another.
But in that
comes from trauma too.
Mm-hmm. But it keeps us so separate that, just like Tolu was saying, we need to think global. How do I think global when I can't even relate to the person next to me, or when I can't even connect, when I'm not even open?
No, it's a thing. Think locally. I think act global. So think locally, I think, is a metaphor for him saying, let's come together, let's build a foundation, and then global, like that innovation, be innovative. So innovating.
Missing that foundation. And I feel the space that is taken by that trauma that we're talking about, and like you were mentioning, mental health, and the byproduct of everything that people experience is taken away from that experience of getting past that to make something bigger, something better for us as well. And having that space, being available to grow, being available to be innovative, to work together, to build a strong foundation. And then there's a few people that have been able to break past that barrier as well.
So what happened?
Well,
when they break past the barrier?
Well, I see a lot of people doing work to bring people up to that and to break those doors or barriers for others too. But people ourselves, we have to be open to it. See, it's like you were talking about.
We need allies. We need allies to listen, to hear us out, and be part of this. So I always say I want to work in rooms where I don't want to just sit down with only my Black communities. I want to sit down with Black community. I want to sit down with allies in the room, and have one story at a time where we can now start changing the narrative, and people can start having a better understanding of where we're coming from. Sometimes I just being Nigerian, I don't know. There was this thing where I was discussing with a Nigerian colleague the other day, not colleague as in work together, but I mean like someone in the community. They said, have you ever felt embarrassed to use the word "I'm from Nigeria" when you're in a certain setting? I said, what are you talking about? Many times. And she asked me why. She wanted to know what she was feeling. She wants to understand what she was feeling. And I said, because of the stereotypical way people, generally the world, analyze Nigerians. When you come in a room, the first thing they think about, are they going to fraud us now? She's a queen of something, not going to get the money. Because everyone thinks like, oh my God, like Nigerians are extra too much, or we dress too much, we emphasize on education, we think we want to get all the big degrees. But I just feel like it's not fair, because like, I always say this thing, and I say, we're just human beings. Being human beings. You know what I mean? Like, I want to say I'm a good person, and so is Tolu, and we're Nigerians, right? And I'm sure maybe you understand coming from the Dominican Republic, maybe there's some things people say. And it was like, why do we have to put all of these labors?
Mhm.
And then that's coming from a mental health standpoint when someone could say, I go in a room and I just say I'm African because I don't want to say I'm Nigerian. And I was like, whoo, that's mental health right there, right there, right there, right there. We need to deal with why we can't say that. Because now I say a lot. I am Nigerian. Ethnically, I am
I think we have
Nigerian.
to be proud. I had to learn to be proud of my background. You know, I used to have straight hair. And it's only been in the past 5 years that I'm letting my hair grow. But it's because of maybe the way I thought people were perceiving me and how I was raised believing that having my curly hair wasn't maybe so professional, clean, etc. So there's a lot of perceptions as well that we carry.
And code switching too, right? We all feel like, oh my God, you came in there, you were speaking with your strong accent. Like you could have toned it. I was like, what do you mean tone accent? Like,
And honestly, I find we overcompensate. There is so much Black excellence already. If you look even in this room right now, I mean, I honestly find we even bring ourselves down a lot. We should speak more people, but we should be recognized more. Not as saying I am better than you, but this is the narrative that we want people to know.
oh, are we just seeing this because we are Black in the Black communities and we're just seeing all of these ways that there is more competition or call it a scarcity mindset? Is this something that is also seen across marginalized group? Or is it just something that is seen across all groups? Or maybe we're just talking more about it because we are in that community being Black individuals? Is this a normal thing? Or do you think this is a pain point? Like, yes, we need to talk more about because this is different for us. There's a huge sense of competition that is not healthy. Because competition in a way is good, right? But
Yeah.
we have this unhealthy one.
I would like to my final point on that note will be, or a mind that knows is a mind that is free. If I look at the other guy there and I realize that I'm not in competition with him. Yes, we may be buying for the same spots once or twice. But if I realize that, hey, if this guy gets there, who knows? He may be willing to help me climb up. Or maybe I'm not just good enough for that position. Maybe I should buy for another. If I realize that I'm not alone, I need everybody else to succeed. Together, everybody achieves more. I'm part of the wheel. I'm part of the gears of that wheel of success for our group. Then we'll stop the unhealthy competition. There will always be those bad elements in every group, in every society.
Yes.
But we don't need to worry about those. We focus too much on the bad.
Yeah, let's focus on progress.
Let's focus on the good. Let's focus on those guys that are willing to work with us. And there are lots of people that are willing to work. But who is the Black plumber that you know? Who is the Black electrician you know? Who is the Black computer genius you know? Who do you know that can design a website?
Do you know how exciting it is for me one time? I was looking for a handyman and then I went into Craigslist and this guy showed up and was Black. I was so excited to say,
That's the thing.
this is it. There's nothing wrong to be an handyman. Like,
We also know where our people are. We don't know who does what. They don't have a place to meet. Well, it needs to dance occasionally. We don't even support each other. We don't. Right now, we're not taking advantage of the environment we're at.
I think there was element of other fear, feeling to protect our space. At least I could talk for myself. Sometimes I'll be here and I'll be vulnerable with this. I have a mixture, sometimes fear, not fear because I'm not confident, but fear about what happens when I get into that space. You know, the battering and things like that. And then sometimes it could just be like protecting my peace because I've been through enough pain and trauma in my life. I don't have to deal with this. I have the right to put my fence high. And then it could also be like disappointment. I was so in it, but it comes out a bad taste in my mouth. Like, I don't feel like gratitude should be anything that should be personal for us to say, I'm waiting for you to say thank you to me. But I always say I'm a gratitude police. Like, you want a sense of like appreciation for your contribution. I'm not saying appreciation in kind or anything like that, but you could tell by the body language, the relationship and things like that. But oftentimes, even our Black individuals or professionals in hierarchy, the higher position put a chip on their shoulder, and
True.
everyone now wants to get Oliver Twist more and more, rather than it's not about how much you're doing for the community or and how much awards you're getting or whatever you're doing. It's about the purpose, the impact over the matter. And I see people in places, I got this, I did that, I'm here, I'm supporting community, but I feel it's all noise, and I'm so sorry to say the truth. It's all noise. I'm looking for impact over matter. I'm looking for actionable strategies and changes in our community that will uplift every single individual that stand on their toe and say, I am Black and this is my contribution, this is my work I'm doing. And I think then when we don't start like you said, we don't start looking at it as a selfish interest, but more about an impact. Because you could have said, what do you mean going to say, Kaz? I'm a doctor, I'm a surgeon, I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm going to open my own hospital, I'm going to work and get this. But you are looking at it more like, I want to give back. I've always heard, what of you, Jamila? I want to give back to the community. I want to educate 300 million families. I want to make sure that the person coming to buy a car understands you don't have to get into debt that you cannot pay. But let me teach you how you can come back in 2 years and even buy a better car. And then another word my father usually tell me, and I learned a long time ago, patience.
Patience, yeah.
That's very powerful, Mariat. When I reflect back, because I think even when I was doing my first company, so I don't talk so much about it because it was such a tough experience for me. Built this company for 3 years. It was in biotech, clean technology, more specifically. I love circular economy. I love how there's so many things that we can even bring from back home, how it can be implemented. But in the space I was at, even my colleagues, the same people that I had onboarded for my business, my same people that were in leadership with me, I started feeling very put down and feeling very insecure in what I was bringing to the table, to the point where even as we started getting investors coming for our company, I didn't know how to. It was so bad on my mental health. My environment was very bad, and it was
So that's the reason I use my block and delete button, because I feel, how do they say, see no evil,
Fear no evil, do no evil.
do no evil. So I feel like sometimes, I always say this, there is right now over 8 billion humans in this planet, right? If I'm correct to say, in the new statistics. There is, oh, God knows how many. I've not done that analysis, so forgive me. I don't know how many of us Black individual on this planet, but I feel I will never go. No, I know 100%. You will not touch or reach every Black man, and using the general terms, on this planet. Out of 8 billion more people on this planet, there's so many other people waiting for us to impact their lives. And most of them are not in cities like mine. But I know there are a lot of people in cities like mine waiting to be impacted. And even in the city that we're living in, we're still not going to reach every Black
Absolutely.
human being. So my focus is okay, I'm not good for you. Next place, I might be good for Tolu.
But that's why we have to change that narrative, and we have to lead the narrative. That's why you were saying we have to be loud. So the story that gets out there is the one that we want to shape the youth that see our stories. See, I want more women to understand, or especially Black women. Yes, you can go into tech. You can also go into finances. You can do clean tech. You can have social impact. You can move forward with the sustainable development goals, and it's all valid. But also your experience, which I believe a lot of us are very overqualified. It's so overqualified. So it goes back to, why are we not taking more leadership positions? And if there are no positions available, why are we not making them?
Because it's a sense of complacency that we've had for generations to come, where I've had this conversation with colleagues in England when I visited, and I'll be like, you still doing that job? It's 30 years on the same job. That would be very bad for my mental health. Don't call me like I really want. I'm not looking for like that leadership position. Do you know what I mean? I'm looking, when I tell people when I want something, it's not about the benefit for me as a person, but it's more about I have so many ideas. Let me be able to have a position where I can be able to
Yeah.
discharge them. And position should not allow you not to use your ideas, but in corporate world, sometimes you might not be able to make that informed final decision. So you want to impact as many, you know, communities or people as many as possible, whatever you want to do. There is always that friction. You know what I mean? So I look at a lot of Black individuals and I'll be like, how are you still like, did you do a course or did you upgrade yourself? Did you want to move? Did you even apply for that role? You know, they're just complacent. And that is also something that affects Black wealth, where the pay grade just go by the cent increase, right?
Mhm.
Right? You can now move the die yourself and be able to acquire more wealth. But we're just so okay in like, yeah, just pay in that house and pay that food and put that little cent aside. And then when we get to that prime age, where is the generational wealth you want to pass over? Because there's nothing there. You know what I mean? Because we feel this is where we should be. We shouldn't aim higher. And we're not allowed to aim higher. So I'm seeing a lot of changes in the society now. And it pleases me when I see a guy, the Nigerian guy that did Calendly, the what's his name? Topic.
Yes.
I feel so proud in Atlanta. Like
I didn't know until you exposed me to that first Black Gemini actually for PLK.
and that's why I joined Forbes BLK. Like, why can we not take things on a global scale? You know, we need to start advancing. For me, again, it's impact over matter. When I'm advancing, I'm not advancing because I want to be the next doctorate of business or I want to be the next doctor of DI. There's a reason why. For me, it's knowledge. So I can use that to, you know, go higher, uplift, change policies and things like that. Impact over matter.
You know what? Vision is really important in
I
what
like
you're
that
describing.
vision.
Vision is everything because, in fact, I feel we need more people that are giving vision. Because I know we're discussing, okay, yes, let's go and create or be in leadership positions, but who is out there giving vision to people to show them you can strive for this? You know, you were talking about complacency, but have they even seen themselves in a different position? And that's where I believe leadership is so critical, not as in I have a title. See, everybody can lead regardless of what position they're in. And
Exactly.
I'm so grateful. That's how I was brought up to believe that. And that is one of the things that allowed me to even
That's amazing.
push to do more from a younger age. But giving vision is so tough.
Because the theme for the Black History Month is all about, you know, the work that the Black generation and now advanced, you know, what we've done, the contributions we've made in different economy.
Mhm.
So I think it's just a reminder, this discussion for anyone who is listening from the Black community and as strong allies. Like, you know, there's still so much work that we can do. Progress, there is progress, but there's still so much more than we can do together. So I think we're going to leave it on that note on everyone can lead. I like that. So leadership should not be about your job title. It's about your vision. Come out with your vision. Don't be afraid of your vision. You can lead with your vision, right? So thank you so much. This has been amazing. It just feels like I'm sitting in front of two professors and I'm like defending a thesis or something like that. So, but this has been amazing. Thank you for being on board on Unfiltered with Married podcast. And for both to having such beautiful conversation like this again. Thank you and happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History.
Well, thank you.